are we looking? It's reversed again.
Oh, let me get you the number to change. We got to update our.
Yeah. And the other way. Oh dear. So confusing.
I'll get you the number. You need 1 minute here.
That all the way off. That's good. Let's see.
Because you got to move the last week's number off the top.
Hi, Lars. Okay. Let's see. We got to readjust. End of stream 34 223 895. And are we still at 34 trillion?
34 trillion. 274 billion with a B.
Well, that's not much change there.
872 million with an M. Faster than light.
Yep. Oh, man.
So about 50 something, I think.
Yeah.
Just
okay. Oh my goodness. Hello, Jason. David. David says hi, little one. Oh. Anyhow.
hi, everybody.
She loves her hair. So I have to apologize. I have the sniffles, so I may be sniffling a bit. So that's it. A mining company in China. How do you know that, honey bunny? Anyhow, so this week there have been some potential advances behind the scenes, which I'm not allowed to discuss. But honey bunny says hi, little one. But might add into an interesting season, that's for sure. Lauren continues to have his shoulder wrenched on a regular basis. I haven't heard anything from Chris this week, so I've got no updates on that. But Lauren seems to be doing better, and we're making progress, kind of rebuilding that truck. And it's been educational for me because he's doing a number of things that I've never done before. So it's very helpful to get some experience. I don't like to do something myself the first time. Once I've helped someone else do it, I'm usually a lot more comfortable doing it myself. But so let's say he's gonna have a really nice truck when he's done. I say I'm learning a lot of things, a lot of the special tools to do that, like pulling door panels. There's a special tool for that. What's new, etc. Just this morning fixed the bottom element on the oven shorted out and stuff. I was cooking something in the oven, opened the oven up, and it's glowing white hot in one little spot. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's not supposed to do that. But it was pretty simple. Only 2 screws hold it in, and 2. Jason Supply Gold Wash Plant. Okay. Let me see if I can look you up here. Okay. So you have a lot of equipment then. Cool. Do you guys, I'm not much into placer myself. Do you guys carry jaw crushers? That's one thing. I'm trying to find a decent supplier for like a 6x8 or 8x10 jaw crusher. What would that be in millimeters? So that'd be about 150 by 200 millimeter jaw crusher. Okay, Jason, let me check. Let's see. That's your YouTube channel. Let me just dig here. Stop. Yeah, just go ahead and save that. Oops, no. There we go. Okay, Jason. So I got you saved on my thing. 150 by 250. That would be probably a decent size. Hey, Harry. Okay, that makes sense, Jason. Yeah, I generally do hard rock myself, although we do have placer miners that show up for live streams, and Miner Jim, who I do a lot of stuff with, he does mainly placer mining, although he's happy to dabble in hard rock too. But yeah, as I say, I've got your thing saved, so I can look up there. About how much would a let's see, 150 by 250 millimeter jaw crusher without a motor cost? Just the crusher itself, delivered to Montana. Whatever do you have any rough price on that? And I presume something like that would have replaceable wear plates. About how much would a set of new wear plates cost? So we got some results back this week. Where in goodness name did I put those? Oh, down here. That's right. Put it down there. And we finally got the analysis back. Well, that would be a perfectly reasonable price. Okay. I may be contacting you later about that. No urgency right now. Where's the... Oh, goodness. When I'm looking down, my nose likes to run. Come on. Where are the latest results? Wow, that's annoying as crap. Might still be in the copier. Aha! That's right, there it is. So anyhow, we got a results back from the bottle leach. And the first important things were we don't see much in the way of significant other metals. There's, of course, iron, but that's almost, guaranteed. I wonder if that's, should be parts per million. Milligrams per liter iron. Yeah, milligrams per liter says so. There's some iron, little bit of lead, little bit of arsenic, very little bit of mercury. Now this is just from the solution, so it's not necessarily the rock, but it would mean that whatever it was wouldn't dissolve. So we got a little bit of zinc, thallium below detection limit, so that's good. Silver, we wound up with only about 1/6 the silver that we did the gold. Looking at the color, that's not what I see. Hi, Jean-Francois. The beads that Eva's making look to me to be, hey, Rock, look to be, a little over 50% gold. They're pretty silvery looking.
Well, remember the one that we did part out, the one that you did allow me to clip off a chunk of that large bead that we then did an assay on to find out, ended up being 14% silver.
Yeah, that's not, I'm talking about that last bit we did from cleared out of the sluice, that last test.
That last one, those beads are awfully silvery. Those are closer to, maybe 12 or 13 karat.
Hey, Jim, how's it going? So anyhow, so it reassures us that it's probably nothing too toxic in there. And the Eco Gold X does not appear to be dissolving the silver as aggressively as it dissolves gold. Might come in handy at some, for different situations. Therefore, it's going to tend to load your resin up less with silver than gold too, everything else being equal. That miner Jim there, he's a placer minus. He's a placer miner. But yes, not a whole lot of placer miners here in general. But Jim, that Jason Mining there, Chinese supplier of placer mining stuff. If you have any questions about equipment or whatever, he might be a good person to ask while we got him on it. So let's say that was interesting results there. It also showed that the gold concentration in solution went up 50% over what it was after a 24-hour agitation leach. Because the we got some results just from that bottle leach, Jim. Well, that's another Jim too, Rock. But anyhow, the head grade is difficult to be confident of, as every assay seems to bounce around a lot. So it appears to vary between a 1/4 ounce to a ton and 3/4 an ounce per ton. And these numbers here are at a 1/2 ounce to the ton head grade. So because of that, but it appears like on that mystery dump material, the sluice itself, that little 32 inch VDR sluice was getting about 50% of the gold. Then about 30% of the gold, let's see if I can get this right, wrong way. Yep. 30% of the gold was in the, or 20%? What does it say? Yeah, 20%. Sorry. I'm trying to read off the screen. And 20% of the gold was recovered in the 24-hour bottle leach. And then about 10% of the gold was recovered in the long-term, just sitting there, equivalent of a pad leach. However, if the head grade was a third of an ounce to the ton, you have the same ratios, but we wind up with almost 100% recovery. And therefore, it's a reasonably good overall recovery, and we definitely get more recovery out on the pad leach. Well, 50 plus 20 plus 10, no, that only equals about 80%. However, if you drop the head grade to a third of an ounce to the ton, which it could easily be, then you get almost 100% recovery. The other 20% is presumably still in the tailings undissolved. I find that a little bit hard to believe, but I'd have to dry stuff and have it assayed. It could be in the coarser material, but let's say 80% recovery isn't where I'd like to be, but I'm not confident that head grade is accurate either. Yeah, we just have to do a lot more testing, especially assaying of the head grade samples. Yeah, we can, Jean-Francois, we can all, let me go get one of the bottles and you'll see what I'm talking about a little bit. This is the actual material that we took the sample from, this right here. And so we need to take this and process that. Nope, we haven't done a whole lot of testing because honestly, when water is a solid, things suck when it comes to testing. So in a couple of months, we'll be able to get back out at the mill and do some more testing. We have lots of material that we can run. Okay, we got 2 or 3 tons of material stockpiled out there that we can run. But so it looks, I say tentatively, I'm thinking these numbers are actually low and they're actually higher, but I like to assume the worst and hope for the best. So that's kind of it. It was interesting to get some results there. And definitely the 24-hour agitation leach did not get all the gold. It definitely, it got another 50% of the gold. You know, the solution increased from 2 parts per million to 3 parts per million. So that's good. So that's the basic situation there in terms of the mining stuff we got done this week. Also put out a video today on the springs on the truck, and I can't see any cracks in those rear spring hangers, but I know that when we were getting ready to replace those bushings, Lauren said, "Oops, we got a crack here." And when he pointed it out to me, it was something I look at and I go, "Yep, that looks like a little crack starting." So we'll just have to see. Yeah, Brian, this was about 2 months after we did the 24-hour bottle roll. Then I would do it like once a week. Just do that, let it sit for another week. And after a couple of about a month and a half or so, that's when I took the sample to the lab. Exactly, Rock. I say so. I'm cautiously hopeful, but I don't want to. I don't want to assume too much and then go, oh crap, it's not working as well as I thought. Okay, what we have here, this liquid is Eco Goldex solution. Okay, the solids were settled out of a test I did, which put a video up. Basically, I crushed material from the mystery dump and ran it over a 30-inch, 2.5-inch wide VDR sluice. And then from there, it dropped into a bucket. Bucket overflowed into a larger tank, like a horse watering tank. And then from there, it went out onto a much larger area that I just covered with a tarp to give me a big settling area. And this is the stuff that settled in the tank, but not in the bucket. The bucket I called the coarse, this stuff I called fines, and the other stuff I called slimes. Okay. My assumption was any gold that was free gold or bound gold. If it's bound gold, it's probably in the coarse material. If it's free gold but too light to get caught in the VDR sluice, probably in here. I bottle rolled the other stuff too, and both of those came up with lower concentrations of gold than this. Okay, so we have way too little data now to make any kind of firm conclusions. But one thing I think we can be pretty confident of is if you use a much longer sluice, you should be able to get much better recovery in terms of gravity. And there's other machines that you can use too. It's possible, Rock. Again, it'll take a lot more testing to have any confidence in what these numbers actually mean. When I said checking the tank, take this stuff here, let it settle, and dry the solids, and send them off to a fire assay. So, and that'll give me a direct reading on what's left. So, we got a lot of work to do, which we can't do until the weather warms up. And so I presume he means primarily crystal locking, where it's still just stuck to the quartz. This particular material is mainly quartz. There's not a whole lot of other minerals and a little bit of iron. But that's basically it, just a little crystal locking. So once the weather warms up, we'll be doing a lot of that. And we just got a lot of stuff to do once the weather warms up. hopefully, one reason I wanted to get this truck ready too is because Jimmy says, correct outlier, no sulfites. Jimmy says he's probably got some construction work for us a couple weeks at the beginning of March. And so I hope the weather isn't really cold in March because we'd be staying in the camper. But yeah. And so I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to damage the truck by continuing to run it. If it was an ignition problem, that consistent of a miss is usually an ignition problem. And if it's an ignition problem, then you've got gasoline that's being unburned going through the cylinders, kind of washing the cylinder walls. That can score the cylinder walls. And that's a brand new engine. Well, not brand new. It's got, maybe 3,000 or 5,000 miles on it, something like that. But I mean, that's a new engine. So I want to be very careful not to do any damage. Say it looks pretty clear that it's, that whole bank is just not firing worth a crap. And, in and out. Yeah, I guess you could say rebuilt. It was basically, the block was a used block that was bored 30 over. And then, everything else was put into it. But yeah. So anyhow, the concern was, is this a carburation problem or is this an ignition problem? And I say, when I'm pulling ignition wires on and off and not getting any real different, more than one, and the spark plugs look pretty good. And once I get up to speed, it's got power at speed. So I'm pretty sure that idle jet is blocked. So that's where that was my main concern. And I wanted to get that figured out within the next couple of weeks. I took, mechanic showed me years ago, just if you take carburetor cleaner and spray it all over things, if it gets to a leak, it'll suck it in and you'll hear a difference in the engine. And I sprayed everything thoroughly with carburetor cleaner, didn't notice anything. And yes, compression testing would be fine. I'd love to take it over to Lauren's and take it in there for a day or two. Unfortunately, his shop is filled with his truck right now. Yeah, I'll probably put some more seafoam in there. But anyhow, no OBD2 codes? Nah, not on that. Yeah, it's that's 76. It's basically a 350. It's a carbureted 350. There's no computers on it. And you don't mean to be mean, Jim, calling Lars too old. But yeah, so I just wanted to check that out. And so I'm not too worried about driving it over to Cardwell and back and stuff like that. But yeah, we definitely need to figure out what it is. But it has another problem that I'm pretty sure is carburation. And that is when you are running at a fairly high power setting, but when the secondaries aren't kicked open yet, like when I'm climbing a grade in second gear, heading up to top of the hill, it would start missing. It's like it's starving for gas. But if you had enough RPM to open up the throttle and kick in the secondaries, it would get the power. So if it was a fuel delivery problem to the carburetor, when you opened the secondaries, that would have been, it just would have crapped out. So to me, something in the primary circuits are not delivering enough fuel under the perfect condition. Now, that could be just the idle jets may be delivering a significant amount of fuel under those conditions normally, and with that one plugged, yep, you got a problem. So carburetor rebuild seems to be the first thing to do. But again, I need to have a shop to work on it, which right now, again, Lauren's shop is full. There's no room to fit both trucks in that shop. So we got to get his fixed and out first. And right now, it's not drivable. It has a number of things to do before we could even fire it up and back it out of the shop. So not a big urgency, but yeah, I plan on pulling the carburetor off and rebuilding it or buying a rebuilt carburetor. Right now, of course, if I had money coming in, I'd already have another carburetor and just slap it on. Putting a new carburetor on, less than an hour. But I don't have the money to play around right now. I don't know about a carb coolant pipe, Jean-Francois. I know there's some stuff underneath the carburetor that in the intake manifold, but the problem occurs above freezing temperatures. So I don't think there's any problem with that. Yeah, there's often a heating block. Yeah, and the on that 350, there's a passage where some of the exhaust gas can kind of circulate. It's almost a dead airspace, so to speak, but it connects essentially the two exhaust manifolds through the intake manifold, a little passage to the intake to heat it up. But yeah, that's not the issue. Because if the carburetor jets were working, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but if the carburetor jets were working, the idle jets, when it's in there idling, you notice a big difference between completely closed and falling open. I mean, pulled out. There's really no difference. And I pulled it out completely, and it's sucking air in there. So apparently, past the needle valve, it's still open. I'm thinking it's plugged before the needle valve. Yeah. And say so. To me, it seems like there's a carb issue that needs to be fixed, which, okay. The only thing that pissed me off is I had a guy rebuild the carb, last fall. So that's pretty annoying. So, but anyhow, that's the situation there. And then we're still planning on going to Boston in April to visit her son for his birthday. And so we got to get a little money together there. And we also have to do some repairs on the van. It is, there's one potentially significant repair we have to make. And that is there's a coolant leak near the top of the radiator. I don't know if it's the radiator or the reservoir hose or whatever, but pretty easy to figure out. Hey, Rock, you get a good night's rest then. Keep it safe. Thank you for showing up. So anyhow, we've got a coolant leak that we got to worry about. For some reason, a coolant leak near the top of the radiator is not a big problem in the middle of frickin' winter in Montana. Also, we're not going to have air conditioning again. Doesn't seem like a big problem. Oh, I understand that, Rock. I drive a non-carbureted minivan. Yeah, Yeah, it's a quadrajet, Lars. Um, so good night, Rock. But to take that truck and convert it to a throttle body fuel injection takes a fair amount of money and a few little modifications. And probably be good in the long run. It'd give you better fuel economy and probably easier starting in the winter and stuff. But it's not a bolt-on sort of thing. You have to make a few mods. So that's that. I say we got to work on the little minivan. We'll probably take the mattress out of the truck, put it in the back of the pull the seats out of the minivan, and put the bed back there. So if we want to take a nap or whatever, we can. What the heck is an idle plunger, honey bunny? And could it be whatever the heck is causing the problem? Again, I'm not a carb guy. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none sort of thing. So I don't know. Lawrence says he's comfortable rebuilding the carb, and once we got room in his accelerator pump, I don't think it's an accelerator pump, but okay. But once we get his stuff out of there, we can get the truck worked on. Until then, there's not much we can do about it. But we're getting his stuff. A lot of it also is parts. We'll work on something, and then it's like, okay, now we need a part. Yeah, I don't think it's the accelerator pump. That seems to be working good. Yeah, Lars, that would suck. Yeah, I agree, Jean Francois. That is not the issue. Most specifically, when I'm starting it, I can pump the gas pedal a couple times, and it clearly adds fuel to the situation. So, yeah, I don't think that's the issue. I was just curious, honey bunny. But as I say, so we got to get the van fixed up too. Originally, it was a fairly simple concept until Lauren wound up having to have two surgeries after the season and recovering from those before he could get back in the shop. So, I mean, he's recovering well and everything. We're getting stuff done. It's just going to take longer than desired, but I don't see any problems because of it. It's just annoying that you can't get it done as quick. And so that's basically it. Well, that's what I think it is, honey bunny. I think the guy that rebuilt the carburetor just didn't blow everything out well. And that's it. Nice. That would work, Jean Francois. Well, I was thinking of taking an air hose and sticking it, pull the adjustment screw out and then blowing it out with an air hose. But we'll see. Again, if you have plenty of money, life's simple. Well, not simple. It's simpler in many ways. But yeah, if it hadn't been for that, I would have just already ordered a rebuilt carb and slapped it on. That's a job I can do without a problem. I'm pretty sure. Um, so, yeah, not a big deal, just an annoyance. And another thing we're going to need to upgrade here soon is probably this computer. Little one, I was thinking that what we might do is, money permitting and stuff, getting a replacement computer, and then when we're over at Ryan's, he could maybe reconfigure and transfer stuff. Take the new computer. Here's the old computer. Here's the new one. Can you get the new one
The
running?
one I'm worried about getting stuff off is my old one. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's why we got that all copied, But anyhow.
I mean, my goal is to get the QCAD on your computer, so you've got it on there, and maybe have Ryan get some form of Word on your computer, so that when I get a new laptop, all of your work stuff is on one computer, and anything I need to do is on the other.
I've already done that at least once, Dave, but yes, I agree. I say that might work. We can give it a shot. I'm pretty sure I don't know where the dirt could have come from because I got three. Let's see. One, two, yeah, three fuel filters in line. Four fuel filters in line on that thing. There's a fuel screen before the electric fuel pump, booster pump basically. And then there's a fuel filter, cartridge filter after the fuel pump. Then there's a cartridge filter up on top of the engine. What I use that for a lot is just so I've got a sight glass, basically. I can see if there's gas getting there, etc. And then there's the sintered filter in the actual carburetor itself. So there's a lot of filtration there. So maybe the seafoam will work. It's certainly cheap enough to find, but I'm not using that truck right now that much. So let's see. We already got the bread, right? Okay, that's done. And that's done. Huh. Anyhow, so I say, I don't think it's a huge major technological issue. It's just a matter of getting it in the shop and working on it and getting it fixed. We'll just have to see. But the trip to Boston should be kind of interesting. By the way, if anyone, I wouldn't be surprised, honey bunny, if anyone wants me to stop by there or whatever, if you can just email me. I know I'm talking to Jason at Flower Gold Wizards. There was somebody from Minnesota that wanted me to see him. But anyhow, if anyone wants me to stop by, get me an email and we'll see what we can coordinate on that. So that's about it there. Say, got plenty of stuff lined up this summer. That's for frickin' sure. We're also looking at doing. Hello, Harry. We're looking at doing a LiDAR study at Top of the Hill too. There's not an electronic choke. It has an electric choke. The one that just heats up and comes off. Yep. That would be cool, honey bunny. Where's Jean-Francois? So, assuming that gets done, that could be interesting also. Will be, as I say, the cost in general seems plausible. The amount of area to be observed is uh, adjustable. I mean, we can change the amount we're looking at for whatever reason. For example, I would presume it would be much more efficient to do it in day increments. You know, they go out there and they run their drone for a day. And if you had like a day and a quarter, it would cost you a lot more per unit of information. And so that's another interesting thing that we're planning on doing this summer. Let me check something too. We do have a drone company here, well, up there about 20 miles in Clancy. And they run LiDAR drones. I'm not sure exactly what else they can do with a drone. Come on, silly thing. Yes, I understand. Just trying to get him an email here, folks, for a second. I'm going to check and see if that drone company got back to me. He's currently at Mardi Gras. So communication is not going to be rapid. Okay, he has not gotten back with me, so I have no further details on that. So, say we got that tentatively planned for this summer, and say exactly how much area we look at will kind of depend on the technical details of pricing and what they can do in a single day, etc. That's correct, Jean-Francois. The problem in a lot of this area is it's timbered. We have a lot of trees, and so from like Google Earth or whatever, many areas you can only see the tops of trees, which there has been a lot of disturbance there. There's prospect pits and trenches all over the place. So we'd be trying to see what kind of activity was done in years past would be the idea. I do not know Jean-Francois. I also asked him, can it see through trees laying on the ground? And the guy said, it depends on how decayed they are. So I'm not sure exactly how it observes the ground surface in a forested area.
Well, that makes me think temperature might be involved somehow.
Yeah. So let's say we shall see. It probably won't happen until at least July. First of all, to get up there, we got to wait for snow to melt. To get the best resolution of the ground, it's best not to have it covered with snow, etc. But for all I know, the LiDAR is synthesizing, okay, I'm trying to see this point from this angle, and then I'm trying to see that point from the same angle, from a different angle, and the same point from another angle, and it figures out which was the best view of that particular point. I don't know. Well, let's see what. Smithsonite with calcite, huh? Zinc. Yeah. Eva would like that, I'm sure. I say it depends on our money and time constraints, Honey Bunny. At this point, I'm unaware of any plans to launch a Starship in April. I know they're pretty close to being ready to launch one right now. So if they did, my guess would be that they're going to launch one in March sometime, and then it'll be past April before the next one. So that would be a situation where we would, probably not divert to Boca Chica for that. But if they can do a Starship launch, we're likely to put forth a lot of effort to go see it. So we'll just have to see what happens. But yeah. Hello, Tricky. How are you doing? Thank you, honey bunny.
Hi, Tricky. Kiss the babies.
So it was nice hearing an email, seeing the email from you a little while back, making sure that everything's still going okay, and that video was kind of interesting. Was that magnetometer? Would that be able to see like iron mineralization in bedrock? Do you think? Because that could come in handy a number of different places. And how deep does that penetrate? Thank you, Trick. I'm glad to hear that, Tricky. Um, so that was an interesting. Okay, and what's the depth of penetration on that, Tricky? We we may be focusing a little more, 150 meters. Well, that's pretty good. Um, we may be doing a little more general exploration this summer if we don't find um, a good ore body to focus on exploiting. Uh, would like to still, I think 2 weekends and I'll have um, a Montana B pretty well dealt with. In this case, Miner Jim, it was displayed in real time on a laptop, basically. That's cool, Tricky. Say, I'm not sure how useful it would be for me, but yeah. 35K, huh? Did you super church that truck yet?
No, we're not supercharging bugs.
Oh, I think it's probably supercharging. No, no, it's that new engine that Will put in there. It's got pretty good grunt to it when needed. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, Jim. He sent me a little video, and they were essentially just looking in real time in the ground. You know what he's doing, and so that was pretty interesting. So let's say I got loads of mining stuff planned for this summer. Geez, there's not enough summer to do it, but we shall see what we shall see. You know. That was the one from Tricky was a personal video that he sent to me via email. I'm not sure if Tricky and you have each other's emails, but that's where it came. It wasn't one on the internet, so to speak. That'd be pretty good, Harry. You have a video on that yet? Because that could be very useful for some of the stuff. So, I say it's going to be a real fun. Once we hit April, we should just be like nonstop. Uh, okay, Harry, I'd like to see that when you get it. So, anyhow, that's loads of stuff we're planning. Yeah, Jean Francois, it'd be interesting if they're willing to sign a contract with a guarantee of some sort. Um, I think magnetometers generally work either direct, in other words, they can feel the magnetic field of a fairly significant size ore body, like maybe what Honey Bunny has, but also they can see the distortion in the Earth's magnetic field. I can certainly understand that, Tricky, to say nothing else of, um, you know, whenever there's a lot of valuable stuff, physical stuff that's easily cartable, you have to worry about all kinds of things. So, um, yeah, you've got a complex situation there that I am not sorry that I don't have the stresses associated with. But I'm sure you're having a very interesting time, and I hope it's a fun time too. Yep. Um, but yeah, that'd be kind of a high intensity situation. Um, but that's it. I'm looking at a number of things. Say there's Jeff, and something else came up last week that may work out. Um, Plus, we still got a lot of work to do on Top of the Hill and Montana B. Although Montana B may be close to going into care and maintenance at this point. We'll see when I finally finish the breakthrough, get everything cleaned up and ready to proceed, and then get some samples, and uh, we'll go from there at that point. We got a lot of work to do on the milling and processing ends. There you go, Tricky. Um, so, let's say we just got loads of stuff to do. Um, and you can't get anything done here in the wintertime, not outside, and we don't have a big inside area to work. Say, especially as Lauren right now, his shop is taken up with his truck.
Which makes perfect sense. It's his shop.
Absolutely. He's got to get his stuff done first. And so, I said, I don't see any problems. It's going to take a little while to get to it. But yeah, once things bust loose, we're going to be really, really busy doing stuff. That's for sure. So that's kind of where we're at on that. trying to remember who it was that said they were in Minnesota and wanted me to stop by. What we'll probably do, since Jason at Flower Gold Wizards wanted to say hi and everything, we'll probably kind of go through the upper part of Wisconsin there, then up through Sault Ste. Marie, and then back down through Michigan like that. Avoid Chicago. But it shouldn't add very many miles, but should be pretty interesting. So that's my tentative plan. Anyone in North Dakota or Minnesota would potentially be pretty easy to do too. And I know there was somebody, I think last week, that said something about they're in Minnesota. But we got plenty of time to line that out. And again, if anyone's got any work in the Helena area right now that could use me, that'd be fine. That's a problem you like to have, Tricky. You know, that's just too heavy to pick up by my hands. Wow, what a problem. Wish they were all that type of challenging. By the way, I need you to fill up my pills tonight, little ones. Let me put these over here.
Okay. I'm just watching the numbers roll by.
Yep. So, I say, when it comes to the greater world, I heard something this morning. I have no idea whether or not there's anything to it. Now, first of all, this is kind of politics, but I mean, New York governor admits state legal targeting was at Donald Trump. Because a lot of companies are expressing concern that, the legal system is kind of arbitrary and capricious in New York, as witnessed by what happened to Donald Trump. The governor tried to reassure everyone that you don't have to worry. Everything is fine. Let's see. On WABC, she was asked if other New York business people should be worried. If they can do that to the former president, can they do that to anybody? I think that this is really an extraordinary, unusual circumstance that the law-abiding and rule-following New Yorkers who are business people have nothing to worry about because they're very different from Donald Trump and his behavior. So they basically said it was politically targeted. That's supposed to reassure people? I don't think so. I know that the truckers have been saying that a number of them are saying they're not going to haul any loads into New York while this stands. And I'm not sure if that has, resulted in anything significant or not. Does anyone have any knowledge about whether or not that's actually resulted in anything of any significance? I'm curious, but I'm not seeing much. But then they had a lot of stuff going on in Europe that I didn't see anything on the normal channels either. So I would not be surprised if there was something significant occurring that I could not find using standard sources. That's so annoying. Brian Smith says a YouTube video says that the truck stops in New York are empty, which may be true, but it's a YouTube video. So, that's kind of what I was seeing was there's kind of anecdotal reports, but I don't know if there's anything to it. I'm looking for some kind of confirmation that there's something significant here. but yeah, that um, somebody who's been with the resistance for a long time, smart guy. Um, he was saying that he's currently in Europe right now because he says if you're going to fight a communist, socialist, fascist government, you want to go to the people who've done it before. Poland, solidarity movement stuff. So he says the Eastern Europeans have a lot of experience with fighting totalitarian governments with civil disobedience and stuff like that. So he's actually on the ground, learning and observing to see what works over there, what doesn't work over there, what he thinks will work over here, and what he doesn't think will work over here. But right now, it's pretty clear that the will of the people is not really the biggest concern of our elected representatives, which is kind of a problem. So he's looking to see what they've done in the past, specifically like the solidarity movement of Poland, where they used targeted general strikes to impose the will of the people upon the representatives, or the call it the governing class. Um, so, say this whole thing seemed pretty spontaneous in New York.
Huh.
I don't have
Oh, that's interesting.
a whole lot of confidence it will work, but it'd be great if it did. What, little one?
Well, remember Mitch McConnell's sister-in-law, the Chinese chick, Ms. Chow, died last week.
No, I don't
Okay.
know that.
Well, this was at midnight or 12:12 a.m. when an ambulance arrived at the scene, where a car containing one person was completely submerged in the pond, estimated to be between 12 and 15 feet deep. And
Okay.
there's a total news blackout in the neighborhood. Even
Huh.
the rich people who live in this neighborhood in Texas can't find out shit. But yeah, that's how his sister-in-law, who was the CEO of Foremost Group, died,
Huh.
apparently.
Mitch McConnell's sister-in-law apparently died in a tragic car accident. BLM agenda. Yeah, you see, the BLM agendas were pushed on a political side and also by rioting. Okay. Um, and if we rioted, well, you saw what happened on January 6th. You know, if we riot, we go to jail. If we protest, we go to jail. If we stick our heads up, we go to jail. So it has to be um, not so direct, but nevertheless effective. That's what, we're seeing what we can do. I have a lot of faith in American ingenuity. Jean Francois says it's like people dying from natural causes, gravity, after being thrown out 27th floor. Yeah, a lot of these bankers committed suicide several years ago. Some in some pretty challenging ways. Like being shot 27 times in the head with a nail gun. you know, uh, but you know, I say we shall see. But it looks to be a very interesting year. That's for sure. I'm hoping that the situation doesn't become so unstable or hazardous that we can't do our trip in April because Eva really, really wants to go. So we shall see. And they had one. My brother lived near the Apache reservation in Arizona, and um, they like to keep their issues amongst the tribe. So they had a very high suicide rate, but a lot of them were rather suspicious, like the guy who shot himself 7 times in the head with a revolver.
Oh, now you're talking like somebody whose tinfoil hat's a little too tight, dude.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, that It's one of those weird things. Yeah, that one was pretty funny too, Jean Francois. Yeah, he might have committed suicide. I'm sure it wasn't accidental. He was either pushed or jumped. But yeah, that was a little odd also. But let's say we got a very interesting situation right now where all kinds of strange things are happening. I also need to know when that next day of the Fannie Willis hearing is. That was pretty wild. Um, yeah, that's pretty crazy stuff there. So, say we shall see what we shall see. But we do have an interesting year ahead of us. Um, I'm hoping it doesn't disrupt things too much, but I'm not too confident of that. Well, yeah, I got a lot of shit to do this summer. A lot of stuff to do. Um, Itching a little bit to get out in the field, but there's not much you can do. Um, I like doing field work. I like camping with Eva. I like wandering through the woods with Eva, stuff like that. I really enjoy that. So it's a bit annoying, yeah, to be confined, but we're uh, we're only a couple of months away from getting freed up here. So we shall see what we shall see. Theoretically, in 2 months we should be in Boston because this will be Ryan's birthday in 2 months. So that should be cool. Well, and they've always got. He was already got a couple of museums I haven't been to lined up and stuff like that. She knows Boston real well, and so she's kind of figuring out with Ryan what's going, and I'm just going to be along for the ride. Yeah, that sounds like it would work, Jeff. I say, well, some of this is just in my head, David. I haven't bothered making a detailed plan because the first casualty of battle is the battle plan. So everything is so contingent on so many other factors. Um, and we'll just have to see what happens. But I'm I'm highly confident of a very interesting summer. And besides that, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Um, I think I'm very lucky to have a woman that's not not terrified of hardly anything. That doesn't mean she doesn't get scared, but she doesn't freeze up. And who likes doing the stuff I like to do. Um, it's very comforting, and I really appreciate that. I also appreciate you guys too. You're correct. Excellent, Tricky. Again, hug the kids and
Kiss the
be
babies.
careful. Okay.
Kiss the babies. Don't just hug the
Oh,
babies.
Eva says you got to kiss the babies too. Okay. Kiss the babies and be careful.
And spoil your wife.
Oh, now she's got another one now. Spoil your wife too, Tricky. We'll do our best, Tricky. It shouldn't be nearly as hard as for us as it might be for you on that one. Uh, so anyhow, that's a bit. You got anything interesting in terms of news around here, Jim, that I'm unaware of? Is there, regulations or this or that that are happening big companies moving in? Is there any like local scuttlebutt that I'm out of the loop on? Uh, uh, well, I'm holding up pretty good for not feeling too good. So let's see. That's about it as far as I can think of. Anybody else got anything interesting? What does TTFN stand for, little one?
What?
Tricky said, "Okay, will do. Spoil the wife. LOL. I will tell her that. TTFN."
Ta-ta for now.
Okay.
That's
Take
a
care,
favorite
Tricky.
reference from Winnie the Pooh. TTFN. Ta-ta for now.
Yeah. We got, I don't know, about 10 inches one day last week. What was that, like Thursday or something? Yeah, she informed me, Tricky. Thank you. Stay safe. Um, so I think it was like Thursday of last week. We got a pretty good snow. Um, right now it's oscillating above and below. Temperatures, let's see what the weather is like. Wow. This week, sunny all the way through Sunday, in the 40s, barely getting below freezing at night. Wow. That's some pretty warm stuff, assuming it comes true. Wow. Going to be a warm week. Yeah, Tricky. When I was young, every joint in my body was stiff was limber except one. Now that I'm old, every joint in my body is stiff except one. Yeah.
I just got a notification from some yo-yo called Hard Rock University that a video was uploaded.
Yeah, I did. I put up a video earlier today, little one.
Huh. Well, your notifications is right.
Nighty night, Jean-Francois.
Just plus there.
So, anyhow, it'll give us a little opportunity to get some stuff done that I wanted to do. Tomorrow afternoon was my plan, evil one, to go out there and check this out, little one. I'd like you to come out with me, and we'll check some things out. And I don't think Lauren's on there. I haven't seen him tonight. Lauren, are you there? If you're there, you gonna be feeling okay tomorrow morning? Yeah, in the lower elevations, it wouldn't have been too hard to keep doing stuff. Well, aside from people falling through the ice on the lake, what, Harry's? So, yeah, got some good weather. Forest fires, yeah, could be. Yeah, I could probably get that gutter put up this week pretty easy. I'll have to check on the materials. I've got a list of everything with that. It gets cold. Yeah, it's been doing that a bit. I'm not sure if we're going to have another real cold snap before spring hits in. It's starting to get um, little closer now. I mean, after March, you're pretty much safe. Yeah, well, Goldstream, that was one of my first experiences in Montana was fighting a grass fire. Yeah, so it's a little bit different here. I'm used to Southern California where any fire is like that's an emergency right now, all hands on deck because you gotta. If it's small, you want to keep it small, real. And turned out that little ridge on the other side was a road, so there was no big problem. Uh, so I don't know. There's just not much to do right now, so I'm doing that. But luckily, Lauren's got a lot of work, mechanics work, so that keeps me occupied. As Eva can tell you, I don't do well not doing nothing. That's more of an Eva question, outlier. It says lots of different types of crucibles. Which ones are for what? Do they all need preparation with borax prior to use?
Um, my crucibles actually,
She's thinking how to answer this, outlier.
yeah, I'm thinking how to answer this.
I know if you had like a scorification disc or something, you'd want
My
to season it.
unglazed, non-white porcelain crucibles, the ones that look like shiny, my unglazed fire clay crucibles, like my plain brown ones, those all got borax treatment. Okay. My glazed ones that look like actual teacups that were fully glazed inside now, my little
Ceramic.
tiny white ceramic ones did not get borax glaze. So that's basically my criterion. If it's already got a glaze, I don't bother adding extra borax glaze. If it does not have a glaze, like my scorification dishes that all need to be cleaned now, and my crucibles, then I add a borax glaze.
She's got a lot more experience on that than me because I've been usually doing the other stuff. You're welcome, outlier. Um,
Somebody has to run the lab, and it ain't you, dude.
You're better at it than I am. I'm better on the theory. You're better on I won't say routine, but the application.
Precision and obsessive paperwork.
Yeah.
They're a thing.
Obsessive paperwork and stuff. Yeah. You're welcome, Harry's. Yeah. David says, just stay away from that door. It's actually hinged on the other side now. The door we replaced that with is now solid core instead of an interior door, but it's also hinged on the other side. So it'd be quite unusual if there was ever a high wind from the direction where it would matter with that door. And that's why we hinged it on the other side. Um, but that was nasty. I mean, it'll throw her out now. No, it's on the left side looking in instead of the right side looking at that. The wind almost always comes right to left at that door or straight at it or somewhere in that quadrant. It almost never comes left to right. And I've never seen it in 2 years do that at any velocity. You might get a little breeze, but a good heavy wind, nah. So by opening the door the other way, solved the danger pretty much. And she's doing really good in the gym too. Um, she's going to be stronger this year than she was last year, significantly. You know, um, so that'll be cool. Uh, but she's doing in general pretty well. I mean, you wouldn't know she broke her back a little over a year ago. Um, my right knee is getting a little bit looser, stuff like that, but doesn't seem to be a big problem. The new numbers are up. Well, see, she's not a gold digger though; she's a silver digger. 275 billion. So it's gone up, what, a quarter billion?
Somewhere around there. From 872 to
in an hour and a half. Yeah. Okay.
Just saying.
Here is the goddess.
Hi, everybody. The goddess is here. So, basically, absolutely nothing is going on. Hi, David. Except him being bored out of his mind and having some sort of a mild illness, you know. Hi, Harry. At any rate, it has been a very bizarre week in the legal scope. If all y'all have not been watching that soap opera going on down in Georgia, you might want to look up Viva Fry and his streams while the hearing was going on. Because I'll tell you, you really got to wonder about Fonnie, okay? And you got to wonder about the boyfriend, Wade. And you really got to wonder about Fonnie's dad. Things are a little bit bizarre down there in Fulton County, Georgia. Just saying, quite a bizarre group of people. I guess they took Barnes too seriously when he said always in cash and never in writing or something, because I'll tell you, now the goddess absolutely believes in keeping large quantities of liquid fiat currency hanging around. Okay? Absolutely. You know me. Mostly unbanked, hate credit cards, don't believe in using plastic for anything if I don't have to. That's all well and good. But about the time Fonnie was sitting there and, saying that she just put aside $50 here and there after she went shopping at Publix, and it added up over time, and then there was, some money that she took out of her campaign funds. Apparently she
Forgot you're not supposed to do that.
decided after her last campaign to take a bunch of money out of her campaign funds in cash. Really now. The goddess has to wonder about some people. Kind of makes you wonder about the legal industry in general. Just saying. Of course, the goddess also wonders about the airline industry and the medical industry and the military industrial complex and our beloved federal government. Oh, yes, indeed. In case you missed it, Washington, D.C., Mordor on the Potomac, is still working very much against the interests of the American people. The rest of the world is kind of watching this with a little bit of awe and a little bit of disquiet, and really you can't blame them at this point. So let's see if there's anything going on in mining. Well, there is plenty going on in the mining world. There are disturbing rumors once again coming out of Africa concerning mining. Apparently, Pandaland, in building their Belt and Road Initiative, etc., has been getting away with things in various African nations. This should come as a surprise to absolutely no one because these nations tend to be extraordinarily corrupt. But, there have been um, more unsettled rumors coming out of the gold and precious metals industries over there in Africa. There's also more unsettling rumors coming out of the copper industry and mining down in South America because things are getting a little bit bizarre down in South America. Meanwhile, BHP says nickel faces a difficult multi year run. So let's see what BHP is up to these days. BHP Group on Tuesday logged first half underlying profit that slightly beat analyst expectations, buoyed by strong iron ore prices and said inflationary impacts were receding. Yeah, right. Rio Tinto, I personally am a hold person with Rio Tinto 90% of the time. But bear in mind, the goddess firmly believes you're better off in a casino right now than you are in the stock market. The stock market parted company with reality a long time ago. When it comes to Rio Tinto or miners, I like to buy nominal amounts on a regular basis and hold until the end of time. Okay? So that's where I am on miners in general. If you're looking for smaller miners, I personally like Hecla over Highcroft, but that's just me. The world's largest listed miner was cautiously optimistic on a demand recovery in the developed world in the next 12 months, but said it was not yet clear how effective stimulus policies have been in China, its biggest customer. It was more bullish on India, which it said has considerable positive momentum behind it. Interesting things are going on in India, by the way, in a lot of ways. BHP said it expects a more balanced global economy. Yeah, right. And evidence that the worst of the general inflationary wave is behind us will have a positive impact on our industry calendar in the year 2024. It seems to have escaped their attention that we're in an effective recession and actually a stagflationary recession now at the moment, along with inflation, which is really very bizarre and unprecedented and like ain't happening. But, you know, since all of world economics at the moment is kind of no longer grounded in reality, you gotta wonder about these people. Just saying. For the first half, BHP's strong revenue growth of 6% was underpinned by higher iron ore and copper prices and contributions from new projects, but partially offset by lower energy coal prices. BHP said underlying profit attributable to shareholders was 6.6 billion with a B for the 6 months ending December 31st, unchanged from the previous year, but topping an LSEG estimate of 6.42 billion with a B. It declared an interim dividend of 72 cents a share. Good for them. Compared with 90 cents per share a year earlier. Well, at least it's still paying something. That's where we can go with this one right now. This beats Citi's expectation of 68 cents a share and a visible alpha consensus of 70 cents a share. Okay, it's beating consensuses. That's pretty good. The market should take a modestly higher dividend than expected as a reflection of BHP's improving confidence regarding the outlook on commodity demands and prices, an analyst at Citi wrote. BHP shares edged down 0.3% to $45.91 Australian amid a sour tone in resources stocks. Really now. BHP, which announced a 2.5 billion with a B impairment charge for its Western Australian nickel business last week, says it sees the nickel industry facing a difficult multi-year run amid a flood of new supply coming out of Indonesia. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Our base case is that the market may rebalance by the late 2020s. BHP operates a nickel smelter and refinery in Western Australia, employing 3,000 people, and has warned the slump in nickel prices could slow development of its West Musgrave copper nickel project. You should be expecting that to be a decision in months, not years, said Henry, Clearly, we weren't expecting the nickel market to plunge as quickly and significantly as it has. While it welcomed Australia's moves to shore up the nickel sector through a production tax credit, BHP said that should not take the focus of ensuring the right policy settings are in place to drive long term competitive positioning of Australia as a nation. The company wants the government to improve industrial relations policies, fiscal settings, and permitting requirements, CEO Mike Henry said, but added that might not be enough for miners that have already put their operations into care and maintenance. You know, we're going to be hearing that phrase a whole lot more often, I'm afraid. Given how significant the challenges in the nickel market are today, that may not be enough to alter course. Okay. Care and maintenance may not only be happening to the small guys. Quite a few of the big guys are facing a crunch coming up. And what were we hearing about the largest bank in the world, JP Chase? They were up to something again this week. Gotta keep an eye on them. They're a bunch of crooks over there. Just saying. U.S. moves to restore stockpiling panic button in EV metal fight with China. Really now? Let's see what's going on here. Insiders liken it to a panic button. And for more than 80 years, the primary job of the National Defense Stockpile has been to keep the U.S. military supplied with essential raw materials and protect against supply shocks. So when China surprised the markets by restricting exports of two niche industrial metals last year, top-level officials in the Pentagon controlled agency and the White House faced an uncomfortable reality. Its panic button no longer worked. Well, no shit, Sherlock. The realization triggered a different kind of alarm in Washington. A senior official in the administration of President Joe Biden, who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss internal deliberations, admits Beijing's decisions to limit exports of gallium and germanium sent a jolt through the White House. Well, I doubt Biden was aware of it, but okay. Adding to already urgent calls for Washington to confront China's dominance of the global metal supply chain. A lack of gallium and germanium, which are mined in tiny volumes alongside aluminum and zinc, would potentially affect production of everything from military satellites to missiles and night vision goggles. On this occasion, the crisis was averted as Chinese exports resumed, but years of budget cuts have shrunk the agency's strategic reserves to record lows. Former officials at the Pentagon's Defense Logistics Agencies, which manages the stockpile, says the U.S. faces serious shortages of the raw materials needed to execute the energy transition at the scale envisioned by Biden and his team. No shit, Sherlock. Even a blonde could have told them that, okay? Barbie could have figured that one out. Barbie the doll, the brainless one, could have figured that out. This is literally the worst time to discover that the oh shit button doesn't work, said one former Defense Department stockpiling veteran who asked to remain anonymous while discussing issues of national security. In the first of a three-part series based on more than 40 interviews with industry executives, officials, and politicians, Bloomberg has looked at Western efforts to create an alternative China-free global metal supply chain. Good luck with that. The U.S. in particular has been a hive of activity. Really now. Really now. Okay.
Well, they said activity, not productive activity.
I'm assuming they're talking Zoom meetings. This has probably been Zoom meetings up the wazoo here. Officials have rushed around the globe to negotiate deals with key allies, while behind the scenes, U.S. diplomats are cajoling Western miners to expand investment in the copper and cobalt-rich Democratic Republic of Congo, where China dominates production. The Biden administration also intends to team up with the European Union to bolster efforts to gain some control over global supplies, while it funnels billions of dollars into projects to create a domestic mining and refining raw material supply chain. Yet Beijing's dominance remains unshaken. Tangible results from U.S. efforts have so far been limited. Why am I totally unsurprised? Just saying. And executives at some of the world's biggest mining companies have reported frustration at what they view as lack of a coherent strategy on critical mineral supply. Other industry executives have urged Washington to take a cue from Beijing and develop a more nimble stockpiling program to both protect manufacturers from scarcity and insulate producers against price falls. Overhauling DLA to speed up procurement at a time when battery metal prices are falling could deliver an easy win, they argue. The price drops have led some Western miners to cut back on production, a trend that's raised concerns about long-term resource security, even as demand for electric vehicles cools. Gee, I wonder why. The U.S. government appears to have listened. Really? In December, Congress passed a new National Defense Authorization Act, which gives the logistics agency greater freedom to make long-term purchases without the congressional approval it had previously needed. A common sense solution out of Congress. That's rather bizarre. Just saying. It also guarantees $1 billion with a B dollars a year in future funding. This is the next chapter in the discussion about how the U.S. can create its own security of supply, said Todd Mallon, Chief External Affairs Officer at Talon Metals Group, which is developing a nickel, copper, and cobalt mine in Minnesota with the help from the U.S. Energy and Defense Departments. In these markets, you could see U.S. government making a really big impact if it emerges as a strategic buyer. This is the beginning of a very, very long article, and apparently Bloomberg is going to be covering this in depth. I don't necessarily trust Bloomberg, okay? But it should be noted that the BLM is still in a state of utter clown car level shit show hood when it comes to getting any sort of paperwork updated, anything done that they're actually being paid to do. They're very good at doing nothing over there, okay? It should also be noted that the environmental organizations are getting more money than ever to sue anybody and everybody who tries to get anything done. Further, it should be noted that despite all these noises being made about critical infrastructure, you notice we're not talking about doing the one thing that should be being done, bringing back our infrastructure for the mining industry here in the United States. Oh no, we're talking about going head to head with the Panda Patrol in the Congo. Lovely, fantastic, fantabulous, maravilloso, wonderfuckingful, okay? We need it here, not there. 99% of the reason we are in this bullshit situation to begin with is things are no longer here. They are there. And everybody there don't like us. This is not a very good strategic move. None of these strategists like to talk about the fact that the single biggest threat we have to national security is how much of our shit has been outsourced to the rest of the world and how much of the rest of the world has been allowed to buy our shit. No, 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 no. People should not be able to buy large chunks of critical American infrastructure. But that is happening too. Okay? So, yeah. Instead of actually doing what we should be doing and reopening our critical metals, materials, and reserves here in the United States and rebuilding our infrastructure, we're once again looking at throwing billions of dollars into corrupt third world African countries like Congo, going head to head with the Panda Patrol, and they're going to be throwing a hell of a lot more money into it than we are, I can guarantee that. This should go very, very well. Obviously, it's going to go swimmingly. It's going to go perfectly. It's going to go fantabulously. Just saying. Amplats plans to cut thousands of jobs after profits plunge. Let's see where this is. Anglo American Platinum, Amplats, plans to cut thousands of jobs at its mines in South Africa, it said on Monday, after profit plunged by 71% last year. The company said it was embarking on a restructuring that could affect about 3,700 jobs at its South African operations, or 17% of the Anglo American unit's workforce, as it battles to keep a lid on costs after a slump in the price of platinum group metals. The miner is also reviewing agreements with 620 contractors or service providers to help save costs, it said. South Africa's PGM miners are resorting to cutting jobs and postponing planned investments as they battle to preserve margins after a sudden change in outlook following a rapid plunge in metal prices. Palladium declined by 37% last year after surging to more than 3,400 an ounce after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Rhodium, which soared to almost 30,000 an ounce in 2021, was trading at 4,365 an ounce on Monday. The job losses come as platinum output has been gradually declining over the past decades, with investors hesitating to invest in new mines as a growing battery electric vehicle sector clouds the platinum metal's demand prospects. The restructuring decision has not been taken lightly. It's very much a last resort, not least as we recognize the unemployment challenges in South Africa and the socioeconomic impact the proposed restructuring may have on our people and the communities we're part of. The Johannesburg-based producer's profits slumped to 14 billion rand, 792 million with an M, in the year ending December 31st, from 48.8 billion rand the previous year. Amplats slashed its dividend by 81% to $21, 21.3 rand per share. Amplat's South African peers, Sibanye Stillwater and Impala Platinum, are also planning to cut staff. The job losses could be avoided if Amplat sells its loss-making shafts, Livwani Mamburu, spokesman for a national union of mine workers, said. We're going to engage Amplats and see if this can be avoided, as we can't allow such a huge number of workers to be retrenched. We have always told Amplats to sell its loss-making mines to interested investors to avoid job losses. Anglo-American CEO Duncan Wanblad told Reuters earlier this month the group is considering deep cost-cutting measures if market conditions did not improve, after announcing in December sweeping cuts to save about 1.8 billion with a B by 2026. Amplats is postponing planned projects at Amandelbult complex, where most of the affected jobs are. He declined to say whether Amplats would consider selling Amandelbult. The platinum miner is targeting a combined 10 billion rand in savings this year by reducing costs and postponing planned expansion projects. They would continue to focus on driving efficiencies and could consider additional appropriate responses if metals weaken further. It will also place its Mortimer smelter on care and maintenance from the middle of this year, saving about 3.5 billion rand over the next 3 years. And by the way, it's about 18 rand, 19 rand to the dollar if anybody's interested in that. But yeah, there are some problems going on in South Africa. There are basically some problems going on in the mining industry worldwide because, if nothing else, we're going to see more energy problems coming up at this point. In case you missed it, those dang Houthis apparently managed to actually sink a British ship by the Gulf of Aden somewhere. It was carrying ammonia. They didn't mention whether this ammonia was liquid or gas or what, but it was carrying ammonia. So there is that. Shipping has been looking a little bit bizarre lately. Shipping is going to continue looking a little bit bizarre for the indefinite, foreseeable future. So there is that. And in other news, once again, the U.S. job numbers looked odd. The U.S. inflation numbers looked odd. And they're being studiously ignored by everyone, which is absolutely to be expected at this point. Just saying. Chinese wholesale gold demand sets January record. You gotta wonder, the panda crowd liked their gold. So let's see what's up here. Chinese gold demand kicked off 2024 with a bang. Wholesale gold demand set a record in January. Meanwhile, assets under management by Chinese gold ETFs reached an all time high. China ranks as the world's top gold consumer, and Chinese demand has a significant impact on the global gold market. Gold withdrawals from the Shanghai Group Exchange hit 271 tons in January, the highest level on record. It was a 95% increase compared to a tepid 2023 and a 65% increase month on month. Withdrawals from SGE represent wholesale gold demand in China. And yeah, those numbers are going up. January is typically a strong demand for gold in China, with retailers restocking ahead of Chinese New Year. According to the World Gold Council, the high level of gold withdrawals from SGE reflected its positive outlook on gold demand around the Chinese New Year holiday. As local assets, including equities and properties, saw weak performance, the strong RMB gold price performance in recent months attracted investors who sought safe haven assets. And this led to continued popularity of gold bars and coins, resulting in manufacturers and commercial banks' vibrant replenishment for the Chinese New Year holiday. Gold also got a boost from the sale of Year of the Dragon themed jewelry. It's often considered auspicious and has helped support broader Chinese jewelry sales. While the price of gold in dollar terms fell in January, in yuan, renminbi terms, it remained steady due to RMB weakness. Gold's performance in the Chinese currency lagged behind global stocks, according to the World Gold Council, but it outperformed Chinese equities and commodities. This should remind local investors the benefit of diversifying their portfolios with gold, which has low correlation with Chinese assets. Okay? A strong gold demand drove the price premium higher in China last month. It averaged $47 per ounce, a $9 per month increase. That is to say, Chinese investors paid an average of $47 over the international benchmark spot price. And that was an average of $9 per month increase. Wow, they've got good premiums in China. I will say that. Ooh, $47 an ounce on gold is a good premium. Due to strong demand coupled with a stable gold price, assets under management by Chinese-based gold ETFs rose by $113 million to $4 billion in January, an all-time high. Inflows of gold into China-based funds totaled 1.6 tons in January, bringing the total to 63 tons. Safe haven demand drove investors into gold as Chinese equities sagged for the seventh straight month and the yuan weakened. No surprises there, their real estate market's toast. So is their banking system. Gold ETFs are funds traded on the market like stocks that are backed by physical gold held by issuer. In effect, investors can take advantage of price movements in gold without buying, selling, or storing physical metal. Since the purchase is nothing but a number in a computer, investors can quickly convert their holdings into stocks or cash whenever they want, even multiple times the same day. It should be noted, the goddess does not approve of this for metals. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. Period. End of story. Okay? But if you want to play with paper, then you might as well play with ETFs. Just saying. If you want to play with paper, at least stick with something that's known. Don't go with that crypto stuff, What will it take for metals to break higher? This is a good question, so let's see what Money Metals has to say about this business. Gold and silver prices remain range-bound and investors are frustrated. Well, investors. Yeah, we'll get back to that word later. Precious metal mining shares have been drifting lower for years, which means yard sale prices. Good time to stock up. The GDXJ, an index of junior mining companies, has been at the lowest level seen since the depth of the COVID sellout in early 2020. Well, yeah, junior miners are going to get hit by anything that comes down the pike. Bullion has outperformed the mining share indexes, but sentiment in the physical markets has still suffered. In order to get higher metal prices, the sector is going to need more love and less hate from investors. Actually, we need more love from sane people who believe in real money. Let's examine some of the events which could get prices moving. higher or lower. The first is the much anticipated Fed pivot back toward lower rates and an easier monetary policy. Yeah, this may be coming pretty soon because all the inflation that we've been exporting to the rest of the world for decades? They're beginning to export it back to us. Yeah, this is not going to go well. The number back there. Jerome Powell and the FOMC have been able to hold rates higher for longer than many anticipated. They have been given extraordinary cover by strong performance in the stock market and almost unbelievable government economic data.
I don't believe it.
Okay, well, the stock market has been divorced from reality for decades, and government economic data has been cooked for decades. So, reports on unemployment and GDP seem almost disconnected from reality. Well, no shit, Sherlock. The data paint a suspiciously rosy picture. Yeah. Which doesn't seem to match the lived experience of most Americans. Yeah. It has, however, been enough to keep investors from hitting the sell button for stocks. I kind of have to wonder about the average intelligence of an investor at that point. The narrative that all is well within the U.S. economy is getting a bit harder to maintain. Really now. There are plenty of voices warning about an impending recession, the one that's already been going on a while. That said, it is an election year, and no doubt the bureaucrats behind the economic data are getting pressure to keep the story going. Yeah, we can expect to see some really unbelievable numbers going forward here. If recession fears win out and sustained selling finally hits the stock markets, political pressure on Powell and the FOMC will be enormous. Should they pivot, the move should weaken the US dollar and foreign exchange markets, and at long last, that foot could be lifted from the neck of metal prices. Another potential catalyst for gold and silver prices is round two of the commercial real estate crisis in the US banks. The Fed's Bank Term Funding Program, which allows banks to borrow against their inventory or underwater bonds at 100% of par value, is scheduled to end in March. Uh-oh. The conditions which necessitated the bailout program have worsened over the past year rather than improved. Troubles in the commercial real estate sector are still growing, and the unrealized losses in the bond portfolios and bank balance sheets are still there. Small and regional bank stocks have begun moving lower once again in anticipation of the program's end. If what happened in round one of the crisis is a guide, demand for gold and silver will spike. At least some depositors look for an alternative place to park some of their savings. Metals prices might also respond if kinetic war should break out with Russia, China, and or Iran. Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, that would not be surprising. Presidential politics may also serve as a driver for metals prices. The election of Donald Trump proved to be a curb on retail demand for gold and silver in 2016. Bullion investors skew conservative, and many believe Trump would solve a lot of problems. Demand for metal as a safe haven fell. The same phenomenon is probably having some impact on demand today. Trump is rising in the polls and Biden has been falling. Gee, I wonder why. While demand for bullion is above 2016 levels, it's fallen significantly in recent months. Another catalyst to consider is price action itself. If metals can decisively break out of the price range where they've been mired for the past few years, the improved technicals and change of trend will draw some attention. Such a breakout might involve another catalyst, such as a pivot at the Fed, but that's not required. Few things can lure speculators back into the market like higher prices. Speculators have been building a heavy short position in recent months. They won't go long and commit to a position there until silver breaks above 30 and gold pushes through and holds above 2100. Preferably, both metals would break overhead resistance together and confirm each other's move. Now, here's the thing. This points yet again to how thorough and excellent the deliberate miseducation of the public at large has been concerning the nature of gold and silver since about 1913. Okay, gold and silver are both currency and money. Okay, all money is currency. Not all currency is money. See Mises.org for details on that issue. Okay, but the thing is this: what we need to try to do as a community is grow the base of people that are doing what we do, that go walking on into the LCS once a week and buy an ounce of two or silver. And when we get a little windfall, we walk into the LCS and we buy an ounce of gold. And we put it away and we don't look at the spot price. And we don't worry about where it is compared to last year. We don't worry about where it's going next year because it's not an investment, people, it's wealth. Okay? This is wealth building. You're not looking at an investment that, oh, I'm going to cash in 9 months and get a great ROI here. No, no, no. You do this week in, week out, paycheck in, paycheck out, because dollar cost averaging is what builds wealth. Okay? That is what builds wealth right there. Right now, I would love to see a whole pile of speculators come in because, well, it would get some attention going. But on the other hand, it would be like, dang, you're interrupting with my nice quiet wealth building over here. Hello? The goddess is not made of fiat. It's not like I can just go wandering in and buy 100-ounce bars anytime I feel like it. The goddess is not made of fiat. So as long as the prices remain practically yard sale levels, I am a happy, happy, happy camper. Just saying. We have been so badly miseducated on this issue. Been going on for decades, which should not surprise anybody, because that's just kind of the way things work. It is very much against the interests of governments and banks to see price discovery in the metals department. And that doesn't even, not just precious metals, okay? It's very much against their interest to see price discovery in base metals, to see price discovery in industrial metals. Because that makes it a whole lot more difficult for them to pull off pie in the sky ideas that are not going to work. And it really hits people in the face as to just how, you know, um, this is the problem. Outlier. Physical holdings absolutely mean something. Because, as you pointed out, they're dwarfed by paper. The problem with the paper is this. The last time I checked, there was approximately 141 ounces of paper out there for every ounce of physical gold backing it. There was over 141 ounces of paper out there for every ounce of physical silver backing the silver paper. So, all these people out here are holding paper gold and holding paper silver. And they're being told, anytime you want, as long as you meet the limits and you follow all of the conditions that are in your fine print, you can trade in your paper for your physical metal, and we'll deliver that physical metal to you. So somebody bought all that paper, we'll say silver, at $10 an ounce. You have a whole bunch of nice silver paper here. They have enough silver paper here to cash out 1,000 ounces of silver. So they decide one fine day, well, I'm just going to cash out my 1,000 ounces of silver and have it delivered to my home. And they go through all of the paperwork and they go through all the hoops they have to jump through. And on these exchanges, one or two things usually happens. Either the company involved just keeps stringing them along forever and telling them, oh no, you still haven't met the conditions, and more fine print keeps appearing that delays the delivery of their silver. Or in more than in one case, when there's a run on that company and people get a little antsy about not having their physical and everybody wants their physical, that company just goes poof. and nobody gets their physical because there ain't none. This is why the goddess always says, don't buy paper shit, okay? Because paper is not being backed. For every ounce of physical gold out there are companies between them all, they're selling pieces of paper that are all laying claim to the same ounce of gold. Now, what is going to happen if somebody's bank closes, and we've had a few people had that happen to them, or somebody's bank starts getting sketchy and they start worrying a little bit and they decide they want to bring their assets into the home. When the amount of shorting and the amount of fraud going on in the paper metals market becomes even slightly generally known, all hell is going to break loose. We're watching this with the COMEX. Every month, there are contracts being negotiated and being traded and being bought and sold back and forth on COMEX for gold and silver. And every month, the days tick down toward the end of the month, and none of these contracts are being filled. And every month, out of the blue, at the end of the month, there'll either be some off-market activity that suddenly results in all of this paper magically being reconciled and everybody looking happy, or some contracts will be filled, but you never hear about anybody taking delivery. Do you know how hard it is to get a 1,000-ounce bar out of the COMEX? A couple of people have looked into that. And this is the thing. Yeah, off-market activity happens a lot, honey bunny. And that's the thing. You want your physical, because if you're buying paper, at the moment, if you buy an ounce of gold on paper, and you can even find a company that will let you take delivery of a single ounce of gold, read the terms on taking delivery of your physical metal on some of these. It's really eye-opening, okay? If you could find a company that would allow you to take delivery of your ounce of gold without 20 pages of restrictions, at the moment, your odds are 141 to 1 against the idea that you're going to get your gold coin. Because this is where psychology is going to come into play. When these companies get in trouble, and quite a few of them have over the past decade or so, I'd say probably about 50 to 75 medium to large size companies that were selling paper metal products have gone poof. Okay. This happens on a fairly regular basis and people don't hear about it. When a company's back is against the wall, they have a problem with psychology. They only have this little pile of gold and this little pile of silver. And they have all these people that are waiting in line, just the ones that can fulfill their very long list of stupid stipulations to get your money, okay, far outweighs what they have to give away.
Return.
Then you have a choice to make, okay? Do you give all the metal to the one big fish over here so that he can go out and say to his influencers and Reuters and Bloomberg, oh, they're absolutely legit. Everyone needs to stop these scurrilous rumors because I got all my metal? Or do you distribute the money between the 10,000 little guys that also meet the qualifications so that they all go out on their little blogs and to the reporters that are talking and they say, oh, yeah, I have no problem getting my medal. These guys are obviously legit. Or do you split it down the middle? You pay off a couple of big fish and then some medium-sized fish. And how do you distribute when you only have 1% of what you've sold? And all of a sudden, your customers
I know
actually
how.
want to take delivery.
I know how. Put it in your pocket and run like hell.
Exactly. That's
what
the
I would
problem.
do.
That right there is your problem with your papers. Because sooner or later, they're not going to be able to juggle. Several times a year, one of these brokerage firms will end up going belly out. And they will end up being bought out by somebody else or going poof. Because, for whatever reason, they lost the ability to juggle at the wrong time. When you have sold the same thing to 100 different people on betting, gambling, that they're not all going to want it, or that even 2 of them aren't going to want it, or 3 of them aren't going to want it, they're going to want you to store it forever. That is not a very good strategy. And it never has been. It is a really, really bad thing. And that is why it is a good idea to buy physical. Because when these guys have to cop up at some point, because if the COMEX falls, if the London Metal Exchange falls, if Shanghai falls, then very, very, very big people are going to be extraordinarily pissed off. That is not going to be allowed to happen.
What would you expect to have to the price? The official price?
The official price is probably not going to go up much. But look what happened the last time there was a small crunch in the physical metals. Long about the middle of lockdown madness. A few people might have missed this, but those of us who watch things did not. Long about the middle to the end of lockdown madness, people were getting a little antsy, and the price of silver took a couple of little bumps. At that time, all of a sudden, more and more of the online places where people buy because, they get good push notifications on their phone or whatever, were showing longer and longer delivery times. Yeah, you can buy it right now, but you're not going to get it for 3 weeks. You can buy it right now, but you're not going to get it for 4 weeks. And when you went to the little tab that says we buy metals, instead of seeing we buy silver rounds for spot minus $1, but we reimburse your shipping, you were seeing we buy any rounds for spot plus 1 or spot plus 2 or spot plus 3 even, and we reimburse your shipping. That's where you see it. When you see those little bumps in your premium at your local store, when you walk into your LCS like we do and the case is half empty, and they say, yeah, we're always buying it, $2 over spot, or we're always buying it $1 over spot. Because it is very, when you're a very big concern like COMEX, if somebody actually wanted to take delivery, I mean like Elon Musk, dear Elon could crash the COMEX. If he bought 10 contracts for physical delivery, he bought 10 contracts, 50,000, 50,000 ounces of silver, 10 1,000 ounce bar. If he bought 50 1,000 ounce bars, COMEX bars, for delivery, he needs it for Teslas or whatever. First of all, he'd have to make it through about the 9 pages of caveats that they put on actually physically delivering your product. But I have to wonder what would happen if, when they came to him in the 11th hour and said, yo, Elon, we're taking advantage of clause 112B, paragraph 2, that says that even though you ordered physical silver and you want physical silver and you meet all the qualifications, we're still allowed to pay you in fiat. I have to wonder what kind of an impact that would have when Elon went public and said, I bought a physical product. All of my paperwork says I bought a physical product and I met all the qualifications to have that physical product delivered. And I met a whole bunch of other unreasonable demands on top of those qualifications because I need the physical product, 50,000 ounces of silver. And now they're trying to give me fiat. You have to wonder what that would do to the public perception here. Because at the moment, there are still many, many, many people who firmly believe that Fort Knox has gold in it. And it even has the amount of gold that the government claims it does. Nobody has seen it for 60 years. Well, more than that, actually. It has not actually been physically inventoried since like the end of Korea, since the end of the Korean conflict, okay? There are still people who believe that the COMEX vaults, the various vaults connected to COMEX, are filled with 1,000-ounce bars of gold and silver. You have to wonder what would happen to the public perception if a really big whale was unable to get a physical delivery. Because somebody is not buying this stuff just to move paper around. There are actually people in this market that are buying it to get a large quantity of physical silver or gold at the lowest price for whatever reason. Jewelry companies, maybe, I don't know. Our local coin shop has had COMEX bars before, 1,000-ounce bars of silver, and people have bought them. Okay? So, yes, they do get delivered. They go out, just not nearly as many as there's paper on. So, you have to wonder what it would take to wreck that juggling game and wake people up, and what will happen to the price of silver and gold when all of the people holding paper start asking for their money and they're told, read the fine print. We're not going to give it to you. Read the fine print. You're not entitled to it. Read the fine print. We can cut you a check. And they're like, but the US dollar's falling, we're in a war, and the price of gold is going up, and I don't want a check. I want metal. That's going to cause a few issues.
What is the educated speculation is what that would do to the price?
The educated speculation on that is the very first thing that would happen if you believe side A of the tinfoil hat community. The very first thing that would happen is before the word got out, the federal government will federalize gold. They will just, they'll say, okay, everybody needs to turn in your gold. It's been outlawed again. Before the news gets out that it doesn't exist. And then, of course, when the news gets out that it doesn't exist, the federal government will take everything that they have stolen from everybody, stick it in Fort Knox, do an official audit, and readjust, revalue the gold to about 15 times what it is now. And bingo, that'll be a really good thing. Remember, these are the same yo-yos that are talking about making a 1-ounce platinum coin and declaring it's worth $1 trillion. So there is that. Nobody ever said these guys were entirely sane here. One cannot expect rational behavior from irrational people. Meanwhile, the price of gold today was $2,018.20, and silver was at $22.66. Platinum at $889, palladium at $886, and rhodium at an even $4,000, which is kind of bizarre and unaccountable stuff. But then again, rhodium is a very strange thing. No idea why it always does the things it does. So let's see what else may be going on there. But that's the thing. You don't want paper. You already have paper. It's called fiat.
And toilet paper.
And by the way, fiat is not money. It is currency. It says right on it. It is a Federal Reserve note. For anybody who understands what the word note means, a note is a debt instrument. Yeah, it's a debt instrument. It's not an asset at all, okay? Our entire economy is running on the trading of debt back, forth, and sideways amongst everybody in the world, okay?
Inflation fears force hedge funds to ditch gold and increase the bearish bets in silver. Let's see what Kiko is blathering on about this time. Gold and silver continue to defy the odds, as the precious metals hold critical support even as inflation fears prompted hedge funds to liquidate their bullish positions and increase their speculative bets, according to the latest trade data from the Commodities Futures Trading Commission. Commodity analyst Societe Generale noted the gold market led speculative outflows in the commodity space last week as 6.9 billion with a B fled the precious metal. The CTFC's disaggregated commitments of traders report, the COT, for the week ending February 13th showed money managers decreased their speculative gross long positions in COMEX gold futures by 13,674 contracts to 100,642 contracts. Short positions increased by 20,219 contracts. There are now over 66,000 shorts being held. Okay. Spoiler alert. Every one of those shorts is probably a naked short. Just saying. The gold market is now net long by only 34,176 contracts as bullish speculative positioning falls to its lowest level since October 16th. Although bullish interest in gold continues to weaken, the price continues to hold critical support at 2,000. Bearish momentum in gold picked up last week after the U.S. Labor Department said the consumer price index rose more than expected, increasing 3.1% in the 12 months to January. As we all know, the actual number is about 3.5 times that now. So, just saying. Inflation was hotter than expected as economists were expecting the annual CPI to be 2.9%. Renewed inflation fears caused markets to push back the timing of a potential rate cut from the Federal Reserve. A March rate cut has been pretty much priced out of the market, and there's less than 50% chance of easing in May. Although gold prices have room to move lower, analysts see a relatively solid floor in the market as Federal Reserve is expected to eventually ease monetary policy. We have highlighted on several occasions in recent months both gold and silver are likely to remain stuck until we get a better understanding about the delivery of future U.S. rate cuts. Until the first cut is delivered, the market may at times run ahead of itself in the process, building up rate cut expectations to levels that leave prices vulnerable to correction, said Ole Hansen, head of commodity strategy at Saxo Bank, in a comment to Kitco News. Yeah. Gold will likely struggle in the short term, but as rate cut expectations are being dialed back, overall, I look forward to seeing how Chinese investors respond to slightly lower prices next week. I believe physical demand from central banks and retail investors, not least in China, will continue to provide a soft floor under the market. Commodity analyst at TD Securities said that the gold market is building momentum for a potential short squeeze as macro traders are underpositioned for the Federal Reserve's easing cycle. This highlights a setup for the yellow metal that is ripe with asymmetry and prone to a material short squeeze as federal officials contemplate the start of a cutting cycle. That right there is a pretty interesting point. Because part of a material short squeeze is every single little retail investor out there. These guys make all their decisions based on what they see the big boys doing. But for every central bank out there, there's a couple of hundred little in-state banks. For every whale that's out there buying thousands of ounces, there's a couple of thousand little guys like you and me buying an ounce on payday of silver or buying a quarter ounce of gold once a month. That, what they are looking at when they're predicting a potential short squeeze, is just the tip of a very large iceberg. We're the rest of the freaking iceberg, and all of us have got to do our work in that regard, okay? In this sense, algorithmic selling exhaustion has already morphed into buying activity, adding pressure on macro trader shorts. Along with gold, silver has also struggled as potentially higher for longer interest rates pushes the market into bearish positioning. The disaggregated report shows money managed speculative gross long positions in COMEX silver futures rose by 903 contracts to 33,004. At the same time, short positions rose by 5,287 contracts to 41,987 contracts. Sentiment in the silver market pushed further into bearish territory by 8,983 contracts. Speculative short positioning has risen to its highest level since early March 2023. Despite the bearish sentiment, silver prices held critical support at $22 an ounce. The precious metal bounced off a 3-month low to end last week with a nearly 7% gain. So, yeah. Silver and gold are still on sale. Premiums are still really low. Fiat currency is getting more and more devalued by the day. And our inflation is beginning to come back to bite us in the butt. Just saying. Which is why it is a really good idea to unbank thyself, lest thy fiat go poof, and buy physical metals. Because if you don't hold it, you don't own it. Bye-bye. And yeah, honey bunny, stock your pantry too. You can't eat money.
Oh, all righty then. And a couple of things completely off topic. Number one, I found a really good show that's on YouTube called Wardens. It's about Montana Fish and Game Wardens. Apparently, it was made a decade or so ago, but it's hilarious because, I mean, first of all, it's interesting to just see, but also it's like, yep, been there. Yep, I know that. It's so cool. Honey Bunny says, such a stimulating news report. But anyhow, and the other one was, there was a show. Actually, there was a thing that happened. Not so long ago. Where is it? I mean, where I put it here somewhere. Latest data, future thoughts. No, let's go to sent items. Yeah, there we go. I'll try and get this link here. Oh, and this was pretty freaking hilarious. Control C. It was a situation in Florida, I believe, wherein somebody who should never have been a police officer totally freaked out.
Bad cop, no donut.
Yeah, bad cop, no donut. Luckily, nobody got seriously injured or even shot, even though 2 guns got emptied in this whole thing. But if you want to see something pretty hilarious, because nobody got shot, there's a link for you there. Oh, and that was pretty amazing. So anyhow, that's basically all the news, I guess. And for those who came in late, preliminary indications are that with the hybrid system where we use the sluice and leaching, we should be able to get at least 50% with the sluice, because we're going to, for production, you'd have a longer sluice. 20% in the initial tank leaching if you put it in a tank, and then we get another 10% or so on the pad leaching. The way we'd probably do it is we just combine these two here We just do the sluice and then run it out on the pad. And that makes for a much more simple system. And it would give us a pretty good hybrid system there. But it looks like it should be a pretty good system. These numbers are a little bit uncertain because we don't know the exact head grade. That's kind of a middle of the ground estimate. If it was a little lower, which I personally suspect is more the case, then the recoveries get even better. But the idea of the hybrid system seems to work well. And the concept of you could use a hybrid system with a shaker table or something like that also. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work. The sluice has the benefit of being extremely simple and extremely cheap. And if you're going to be recovering your gold anyway in the leach pad, why not? You would not want to use that system unless you had significant unavoidable losses to the tailings from the gravity circuit. If you had a gravity circuit that was getting, if you had a gravity circuit where a sluice was giving you, say, 70% of the gold, but shaker tables could give you 95% recovery, then you'd be better off just going to shaker tables. Okay. There's some permitting benefits to that, etc. So if you could get a really high recovery with a pure gravity circuit, that would make sense. On the other hand, if you're not getting a real good recovery with a pure gravity circuit, then by doing leaching afterwards, you should be able to improve things. Unless you had some very favorable leaching conditions, you would probably not want to do a complete leaching system where you leach everything. This is where a lot of people mess up. You need to look and specifically check, but the leaching doesn't work well on the coarse gold because it just takes too long to dissolve. And the gravity doesn't work on the real fine gold because it just doesn't settle. So a combination system makes the most sense in most cases with hard rock gold. It might make sense with a placer gold if it had a lot of very fine gold in it, but that would be unusual, not completely crazy, but unusual. Again, this is where you got to do testing to see what you got. But if you're going to do a pure leaching circuit or plan for a pure leaching circuit, put a simple sluice in there first to get all the 100 mesh plus, because it ain't going to leach worth a crap. Okay. This particular, just this VDR mat seems to do pretty well. And we got a lot more testing to do to more fully refine all these numbers. But we also noticed that most of the gold recovered in the sluice was in the very top of the sluice. So again, we'll have to do a lot more thorough testing once water becomes a liquid again. And we'll go from there. But I would suggest that the whole idea is heavily underutilized. People tend to go one way or the other. For small timers, the one way or the other usually goes gravity, because gravity is a lot easier to permit and deal with. The leaching, you got chemicals, you've got containment, you've got some kind of absorption or collection system from solution, zinc precipitate, whatever. It just gets a bit more complicated. So if you're only going to go one or the other, you'd probably go gravity. You can always stockpile your tailings for later, and build a leaching circuit some other time. I mean, if you're getting 80% gravity, but you've got a high grade ore, so you're well, let's suppose you had like a 2 ounce to the ton material and you're getting 80% of it gravity. You're still throwing away 0.4 ounces per ton, and it's already been crushed and pulverized and everything. It's just ready for leaching. So stockpile it someplace where it's not going to get away, it's not going to get washed away in the rain or whatever. And then later on, you can leach it at your leisure. Okay. Or perhaps sell it to someone who has a leaching system and just, I know that Golden Sunlight around here used to take ores from around the vicinity. They'd buy them and then process them, and they'd make some money, and the people who dropped them off made money. So say don't just throw stuff away, just stockpile as a general rule. So that's basically what's going on there. Truck should be operational right now, although it still needs probably a carburetor rebuild, but it's not flooding, it's running lean. So in these temperatures and these loads shouldn't be a problem. And the van, we need to do a little work on that and everything, but we're still planning our trip to Boston mid-April. So that's what's going on there. Anyone else got anything they want to talk about? So I got the sniffles, but aside from that, I'm doing okay. Eva seems to be quite healthy. Okay. That's a good question, Outlier. First of all, are these hard rock samples or placer samples? Because as a general rule, you don't assay placer samples because the gold is just too coarse to assay reliably. Okay. The bigger the sample, the better. Okay, that's number one rule. You start with, say, a bucket. That's kind of my usual thing if I have that option. Have a bucket, crush it down. Then a splitter is a very simple way to do it. Very simple and easy. However, if you don't have a splitter, then you can do something called coning and quartering. I'm sure there's a video somewhere about it. Let me see if I can find one here.
We can make one next spring.
Yeah, we could. Let's see. Oh, come on, you stupid frickin' thing. Stop. Cone and quarter. Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of it. We got a number of them here. So, yeah, you can just go to cone and quarter on YouTube, and you have a whole selection of things. It basically consists of pouring it into a cone, pouring it at one spot, making a cone, then cutting the cone and separating it into various things, which some you throw to the discards and some you do again. And again, what you're trying to do is split it on a statistically average basis. And then you send it off for assay. Now, a lot of this depends on how, what kind of crushing and grinding equipment you have. If you don't have any crushing and grinding equipment, then life gets less pleasant. Now, if you're using a big company like, what's that one? Global? ALS Global or Skyline Labs, you can take them a pretty big sample. They're still going to charge you the same sample prep fee. Okay? Let them do the crushing and grinding. Okay? you may need to, ask the lab first. You may need to break it up into, nothing bigger than X number of inches. If you have your own crushing and grinding equipment, assuming that you can clean the equipment out between runs, then the finer you can grind it, the better in terms of statistics. And if you're able to grind it up fairly fine, like with the RC46, I'll usually split it down. I'll start with a bucket, crush it through the jaw, run it through the rolls, run it again through the rolls, and then split it down to a pound or two, which I then send off to the lab. If you've got like one of these small chain mills or whatever, then once you split it down to a certain level, you can pulverize it, split it down a little further. Most labs, if you give them a pound or two, they're fine. I mean, like Hiddle, he likes, about this much in a Ziploc bag, about that much in a Ziploc or less. Because the more you give him, the more he's got to get rid of later. And he will do the final pulverization and sample size reduction to get it down to what he needs, which would typically be 15 to 30 grams in that range right there. But if you don't have the equipment, it's better to send a bigger sample to the lab and let them crush it for you. In a case like I used to use Skyline, I have no idea what's going on. Anyone else have any idea? 10, 10, 3, 10, 10, 10, 10, 3, 3. Huh? Clincher? Oh. Should I just block this person? This clincher thing? Is that you, boss, or is that somebody else? Okay, I'll just go ahead and block them. I'd use her on this channel. Okay. There we go. So that'll keep them from messing up our stream. But anyhow, I used to use Skyline because I didn't have crushing and grinding equipment. I break it up with a hammer, send it to them, and then when they're done, they wind up with all this rock, which has potentially heavy metals and everything. They don't want it. So they'll be happy to let you bring back, come down and pick up what they call the rejects. Okay. So you wind up with a fair amount of fine crushed material and some pulverized material, which you can then use for other testing yourself and let them do it. Okay. Hiddle doesn't, he wants the smallest sample possible, but say the big boys, they're set up to take big samples. But this is one of the things where, what you've got determines the process to a great extent. But if you have the capability, if you're hanging down a freaking mine shaft and taking a sample out of the wall, getting a bucket sample taken and out of there is a challenge. On the other hand, if you've got an adit running into a mountainside and you've got, an electric demolition hammer, it's a piece of cake. Spread out a tarp, bust your sample loose. You can often get a fairly good amount of rock with just a hammer and chisel. Get it onto the tarp, because that way you don't lose the fines, you don't get cross-contamination, and put it all in a bucket and work from there. Okay? I say, if you've got the crushing and grinding equipment, that also means that you now have samples you can do the metallurgical analysis. When you send it off for assay, all you're getting is a number that gives you an idea how much gold is in the rock. Because of nugget effect and certain other things, it's, unless you run 4 different samples, from the same stuff, it's kind of an educated guess, basically. Yeah, it's probably in that ballpark, but it might not be. So, and the coarser the gold is, the worse that phenomenon is going to be. But you now have an idea what's supposed to be in there, and you got a lot of pulverized stuff. Gravity separation, you're going to want to try that. Leaching is a possibility. You're going to want to try that. You got all kinds of things you need to do to that rock before you start worrying about your mill. Okay, this is one of the things, big, very common mistake. People buy the milling equipment before they've done the metallurgical analysis. And then they wind up going, wow, that's not what I needed. So yeah, it's kind of like buying a car sight unseen. You may not be very happy with what you get. Do some small scale metallurgical testing first. In terms of gravity separation, you can just take a pan and pan it down. Don't try and pan it right to the gold, okay? But pan it down where you've got 90% plus of the lighter materials off, and you're down to like 10% or whatever. Then you go ahead and take that. Then you take both of those, dry them, blend them, send them off for assay. Okay. Hey, depending on the lab, he may dry it for you free. Probably wouldn't be happy though. Okay. But then send those off and see what happened. Is all the gold in the heavies? Or is it still close to equal concentrations? It can do anything. You have to simply test it. And then you take each piece of information and use it to guide the next set of testing. For example, when we tried gravity separation of Montana B, it kind of sucked. When we assayed the tailings, they still had plenty of gold in them. That's when I tried a settling test. I found the slimes had a higher grade than the head grade. Okay, we got a problem here. Gravity not going to be a happy way of doing this. So then we did some further testing, and voila. It turned out it was like real fine gold. So gravity separation, pretty much useless, So this is a gravity separation. And that means you can do a very small scale gravity separation test with nothing more expensive or complicated than a pan. Just get it pulverized well and go from there. If you find you're getting really good concentration into the heavies and low losses, okay. Now you might want to go with a larger volume gravity separation, like that VDR sluice or something like that. Scale up economically. Don't take huge jumps. I got gold. Let me buy a big giant crusher. Let me do this. Unless you're getting like a really good price and you figure you're going to be in this business a while, even if you don't use it on this project, you're going to use it on some project. Unless it's like that, think carefully before taking risks. This is a high risk business. Your first motivation should be to minimize risk of loss. Like that RC46 was fairly expensive, but I've been using it on a number of things for a number of years. Okay. So for the initial project, nah, didn't work. Okay. But as a general purpose tool, it's been fantastic. Okay. You may find every single device has situations where it doesn't work where the shit, and others where it works real well. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a device like that. And there'll be many cases where it'll be somewhere in between. Okay. Another really important thing, if at all possible, take a small or big bulk sample to the person who wants to supply you with this very, very expensive machinery and say, okay, I want you to run this and I want to get all the residuals, okay, to have a mass aid and such. Let's say you were considering buying a complete turnkey system from Mount Baker, okay?
And they make great equipment.
They're going to charge you money. That's right. They have every right to do that. You're taking their time. You're wearing up their work, putting wear on your stuff. That's fine. But it's a hell of a lot cheaper to pay them $500 to run their equipment for half a day than to buy their equipment and find out that's not what you needed. It's like, fuck, all I needed was the jaw crusher and a heap leach. It's like, that didn't work too well. I don't know what the table costs, but it ain't cheap. It's many thousands of dollars. If it turns out you got something like Montana B, go ahead and save the frickin' table cost because it's not going to do you any good. You would also find out probably in many cases their particular hammer mill won't do you a lot of good because the output is not fine enough, and you're going to have a recirculation system to get that hammer mill to do what you need, to get you the grind that you want. But in order to know exactly what the hell you need to do some tests on a much smaller scale. That's why we have those little bottle rolls. That's why we have pans. That's why we have stuff like this, so that we can do small scale tests. Okay. But that's how you do it. Once you've done enough small scale tests, enough assays, enough sampling, enough determining whether or not there's enough gold and volume of mineralized rock in the mountain to make it worth even thinking about, do some small scale tests, and then go to your equipment supplier and say, hey, run this stuff. Let me see what it does. We've been to Action Mining, for example, to test out their wavetable. Okay. It's got limitations. Okay. Wouldn't do the job we needed. Okay. But that's what you got to do to avoid huge loss, because not only is it a loss, but you've now reduced your options. Let's say you have a total budget of $25,000. Okay. And well, let's say I think a full turnkey system from Action is like about $100,000. Okay. They're not cheap. They seem to be pretty well built and everything. I never used them personally, but they look pretty well built. And so $100,000 is not unreasonable, but it's expensive. You got $100,000. Okay. Now, if you buy that system and it turns out you needed to leach it, where's your money to build your leaching circuit, your tanks, your pumps, and all that other stuff? Okay. By buying that, you've now converted fungible resources, money, something you can turn into almost anything, into a physical object that you can't change with a magic wand. You've now committed those resources to that thing. And unless you can turn around and sell it for the same price to someone else, which sometimes you can with used equipment, okay, small scale testing first. Go to the manufacturer, go to the supplier, go to the person who's trying to sell you this shit. And if you're not an expert, you don't know your ore real well, pay them the extra money to run a batch sample and say, okay, what did we get? How did it work? How much is in the tailings? How much is in the slimes? One of the problems you got with the Mount Baker system, if you were testing it, okay, they use the sand screw for the tailings, okay? The sand screw has an overflow for the water. That's going to take out slimes with it, okay? The sand screw itself has a kind of a sump in the bottom. That's going to tend to be filled with the last batch of ore that ran through. You're going to need to clean the whole system out so that what's in the sand screw is only your stuff. And when the overflow is occurring, you need to send that to a settling system. Hey, how's it going, Bedrock? I bet you the temperatures are fairly nice down in Arizona right now. How's life treating you? By the way, for those who don't know, I break for Bedrock. They do a lot of metal detecting in Arizona and stuff. They're nice people. I've seen them and worked with them personally a little bit, and they know their metal detecting shit. Okay.
Amazing metal detectors.
Well, there is always that, Bedrock. You're welcome, Outlier. And don't forget, this is what we really like to do on the live stream. You notice I was kind of struggling the first hour and a half to say anything of consequence. Then you ask one question, and all of a sudden I got a half-hour riff that's very informative. And everyone else likes same thing. If you have a question, ask it. You know? Everything is really slow up here, Bedrock. I presume this is Adam. Yeah. Water is still a solid. Going to be that way for another month and a half or so. So we're really
Whine, snivel, snivel.
Yeah. You have values in your tails. You always have values in your tails. Okay? You never get 100% recovery. Slimes are the real fine stuff, the stuff that tends to float away, that doesn't settle easily. Okay? Think muddy water. You know, that's what slimes are. Typically, they'll be 200 mesh minus. And so when you process ore, you'll typically get stuff that settles or filters easily and stuff that doesn't. We have a lot of values in slimes from Montana B. Absolutely. When we crushed that, and I just did some agitation, let it sit for a minute, decant half of the water, do it again. It had a higher concentration of gold than the head ore did. Okay. It can happen. Okay. This is why you want to test everything. You don't want anything to get away from you before you've tested it to make sure. Yeah. Slimes, you pretty much have to leach. You might be able to use something like a high G concentrator, something that's, one of those bowls that spins at a high rate of speed and stuff like that. But if it's going off into slimes, it's probably really small. Like Montana B, 80% of the gold is 1/4 of the size of talcum powder. 80% by weight is 1/4 of the size of talcum powder. Okay. It is really fine stuff. Not unusual in hard rock ore. Not at all. Okay? So you do that. I know. Bedrock. And your dry washer did a pretty good job on that stuff. I was impressed because hand panning your tailings, I didn't get squat. That dry washer was doing excellent job. Plus, it would kind of coarser gold. So, you know, but in your situation, uh, I wouldn't see any need to do anything more in that particular situation. I didn't see anything you needed to do more than dry wash. Although, whenever you get in a new spot, I would definitely hand pan your tailings when you're dry washing. It wouldn't take too fine a gold to be a problem. You know, losses. On the other hand, is it worth what it would take to fix those losses? Again, if you're dry washing, you might be able to put a screen on the outflows of the dry washer so that, you know, like you're screening to what, a 1/4 inch minus or something that runs over the dry washer. But then after it comes off of that, you might put like a window screen, 16 mesh or something. And then, assuming you had enough gold to make it worthwhile, that material right there you could stockpile for later processing. Wait until the rainy season, and when that water is running down the bottom of that channel there where you can't dry wash anyhow because it's too damn wet and it won't dry wash, then you sluice that. You know, always check, double check everything, and try and concentrate as much as you can easily. That's why I said like window screen or something like that, because now you're going to be rejecting, especially in wash sand, you're going to be rejecting the vast majority of stuff. So if in the original head grade you only had 3/100ths of an ounce per ton, when you finish all your screening operations and that same fine gold that was only 3/100ths of an ounce per ton in the original material, it's now running 1/3 of an ounce to the ton in that fine stuff. And again, that gets pretty expensive to haul off and treat, although you might be able to put it in your pickup and haul it back home if you needed to. But you could also stockpile it to the side. And then, let's say, come the rainy season, make sure it's not going to wash away, but it's nevertheless close to where you're going to be working. Rain's good, you know, for several days at a minimum. If there's been heavy rain in that little drainage, it's going to be a trickle of water running down along the bedrock underneath the gravels. So where you guys have dug down to the bedrock, you should be able to put a sump pump in there and run a sluice or something like that. Also, if you go downstream a little bit to set up your sluice with your pump upstream, as you're pumping it in there real quickly, you'll be able to build almost a cofferdam of sand and have the water coming back to you while you can throw the sand away. Okay? So, say always test everything. Leach pads on cement bricks. Cement bricks are not going to seal it very well at all. Okay? You're going to need some kind of a waterproof membrane on top of that, Brian. Okay? There's a lot of different ways to do it. Cement shouldn't be a problem with alkali solutions, but they're not going to provide much there in terms of drainage. A geotextile. Take a geotextile over perforated pipe. Okay, that's usually the bricks themselves can penetrate the membrane. They can damage it. In the case of our leach pad, I've got 3/4 inch PVC pipe drilled, I don't know, every foot or two. Do you remember?
Yeah, you put long slits in
Oh,
it.
that's right. I just cut
You
slits in it.
You put
Yeah.
slits in it that went like halfway around the pipe and were slanted, and you put
Yeah.
them about a foot apart.
I just put slits, angled slits across the bottom of the pipe, laid it in, covered it with geotextile, and then put sand on top of that. And the bricks themselves, I don't want anything that's got anything that can push through a membrane. Okay. And then put some kind of a drainage structure on top of that. But geotextile with perf pipe works really well. And at the volumes I'm dealing with, I'm just using 3/4 inch PVC. And this stuff they just use like weed control fabric for gardens. You can buy it cheap. Put that on there and then bury it in sand. Okay. And it took a little while to get enough fairly clean sand tailings. After a while, I could pretty much, I'm dumping it here. The fines are running downhill. And then I could take the stuff that was still sitting there and just shovel it uphill, and use that as what we used to call cushion. Okay. It's pretty permeable. What was my spacing between the pipes? 2.5 feet, 3 feet.
I would say 3 feet.
Around 3 feet between the pipes. Make sure your whole surface drains efficiently, just like you would a roof or whatever, but usually the other way. You want it to drain to the center and go down a channel. And then everything, you want each collection pipe to be going downhill all the way. That's pretty easy to do with a center pipe in kind of a ditch like this. Yeah, there we go. Okay. See where it's tipped like this? And then as your pipes are laid horizontally, they all go downhill. And yeah, it's all plastic.
And there was that one metal fitting that ended up suspiciously yellow.
Yeah, that was in the pump though. Yeah, that was that brass fitting on the hose. It looked a lot yellower than brass when we were done. No iron, no galvanized. Well, black iron you can usually get away with. No galvanized. Okay. And brass in the Eco Goldex, it will also precipitate stuff. Stainless steel will precipitate stuff out of Eco Goldex. Although I don't think it's the steel part. I think it's like the nickel or the chrome or something like that does it. But as far as I know, black iron will work. No aluminum, no zinc, none of those things. Exactly. But I do believe the black iron works fine. I haven't seen any issues with it. I use standard carbon steel for my electrodes in the electrolytic cell simply to prevent any contamination of the electroplated gold that's not easily removed by either fusing or cleaning with nitric acid. 90 mil HDPE is going to be really expensive, but it's going to be really good. My brother was working at a mine, and I'm not sure what thickness it was that they were using. Might have been 100, 120 mil. He says you could drive a bulldozer over it and you wouldn't punch a hole in it. You'd scuff the surface. You couldn't, spin it on its tracks. But you can find a membrane as tough as you need. And remember, any leak is a loss.
I always thought that the Tyvek that they use to keep houses closed off in winter might be a good idea.
Perhaps.
If you could find old pieces of that you got from construction that were not pierced.
Yeah, you want rolls, brand new rolls.
Or brand new rolls or whatever, but
Yeah.
I always thought the Tyvek might be a good idea.
Might. According to Honey Bunny, Tyvek is not super strong. I don't know. They make like 30 mil PVC pond liners for like aquaculture and stuff like that. And that should be more than adequate. I say there's a lot of different things you can do. Depends on your budget, depends on what the concentrate. I mean, if you're going to be putting some really concentrated solutions out there, especially if it was something that's a toxic solution, you want to be extremely careful about leaks. On the other hand, if you're using Eco Gold X, low gold concentrations and stuff, you could be a little more tolerant, but yeah, it's technologically, it's not that difficult to do. You're going to want berms around the edges that are covered. And if you got significant rain, like we have significant rain here at times, we've got a tarp that goes over the pad so that we can separate the rainwater from the leach solution and get rid of it. You also need a lot of storage capacity so that any leaks from rain, any additional stuff like that, all your tankage and stuff should be on secondary containment that drains to your pregnant pond or your barren pond. It doesn't matter as long as you can contain it. But then you know, any place that you got plumbing or anything like that can spring a leak, and then you got losses and chemicals and stuff like that. Well, there's some stuff that's out there from last year, Alex. We've been working on this for over a year. If you go back, you can see kind of the iterations of our system. I'd go back no further than where we have the cylindrical agitation tank, but you can go back further if you want. And the Eco Gold X makes things a lot simpler because not nearly as toxic as cyanide, and so you can have minor issues that remain minor issues. Like, for example, if you've got your membrane laid out and partially cushioned, and you're working your way through the various areas as you get more and more tailings on it, and then a cow gets through the fence and decides to frolic over and stomp on your unprotected membrane, where you have to pull it back up and underlay it and stuff like that. You need to be concerned about critters, especially if you're using a toxic solution. If that cow had been drinking solution and wound up dead in the pregnant pond, we would have had real fun. The hoof marks down there. So we wound up a little temporary containment system for the leach pad and basically relining the pregnant pond because he'd messed it up. And so we pumped all that solution up into tanks and everything else, and had to reline the pond. Be careful. Deers have real sharp little hooves too.
Yeah, we've seen deer track on that thing more than once.
Yeah. Um, the claim owner, when I told him, you know, these cows, I think busting things up is a hobby. He said, no, it isn't. It's their mission. He'd apparently, you know, done cows just seem to have a real knack for screwing things up. They're just so big. They can lean against something and break it.
Oh, yeah.
And so,
And they're stupid.
and they're stupid. Absolutely. So you got to think about all these things when you're designing your systems. Hey, Adam, how's it going? So these are criteria that you need to keep in mind. Are you building what they call a one-time use pad where you're going to just keep expanding it, build stuff up on top, and then when you're done, rinse your solution out and um, leave it there? Or are you going to load it, rinse it, offload it, reload it, things like this? You just have to look at how much are you going to be doing. If it's a one-time use pad, you might need to design this thing so that you can expand it uphill a lot before it's all over. Yeah. When I was at Chem Gold, I mean, we started out, first of all, um, we built our initial pad on top of the ore body with the specific reasoning that any leaks, problems, or whatever aren't going to matter. We're going to dig this out later anyhow. Okay. Then the final pad, um, I don't know, we started out with maybe an area 300 feet by 200 feet and started stacking ore on that. Then we just kept adding and adding and adding uphill. And so, I mean, by the time that was done, it was like 1,000 feet. There's all kinds of criteria that you have to take into account. But technologically, it's not that difficult once you've got the metallurgical constraints identified and refined. You know, what is your crush size? Crush, grind, tank leach, gravity separation, this, that, and the other. Once you get all those things defined, then you can design your system. Then you can buy the equipment to put it together. Until that time, you may just use whatever equipment you've got. For example, I'm still using the RC46 as a jaw crusher. It's got a little 4x6 jaw. But I can nevertheless, process 500 pounds an hour of ore down to half-inch, well, that's more like 3/8, quarter-inch minus. Really good feed size for the Stutenroth. And if it's dry, the Stutenroth can run maybe 500 pounds an hour. My impact mill runs about 200 pounds an hour. Okay. And it's more tolerant. As a matter of fact, you tend to add a little bit of water to keep the dust down. But I say these are the sort of things that, start small, start with what you got, start with your inexpensive gravity separation, test, and then go from there. Okay. The other thing is, if you have a reasonable amount of gravity concentratable gold, doesn't have to be high percentage, just a consistent percentage, this can, to a great extent, take the place of assays. Okay. It does not replace them, but it can, in many cases, give you the actionable intelligence you need to keep going at the time and place. For example, when we're out at top of the hill, pan samples, determine which ones we want to send off for assays, which structures are carrying the most gold, things like that. I can do that with this fast, real fast.
Yeah, I collected all kinds of samples and you were panning them right there.
Yeah. She was collecting samples, and then I'd pan them, and we sent some off for assay. And say, the big boys, like the people who hire rock, okay, they don't worry about stuff like this, even though sometimes it would really help them. But it's fast, it's quick, it's cheap, and it can give you the information you need to keep digging or move where you're digging or whatever right then. When you're sampling, how handy is it to be able to tell how good it is quickly? Is this crap? Is this low grade? Is this mid grade? Is this high grade? Probably you can do it with this. Okay. So it's real important. It's not going to take the place of assays. It's not going to give you good numbers on the real microfine gold. It's not going to give you numbers that any investor is going to trust. But it can very likely give you numbers that you can use to decide what to do. So where do we put this material when we break it or move it? Does this go to that dump over there or that one over there or off to the mill? And don't be afraid to segregate stuff either. When you're mining, if you've got 3 different kinds of material, you've got this quartz vein, you got this calcite vein, and you've got granite wall rock that's got some staining in it. Well, don't be afraid to send the quartz one place, the calcite someplace else, and the stained wall rock a third place, and then the main granite a fourth place. If you can do it easily, don't worry about it. Just do it. It may come out later that that's important. But I say that's it. It's also, I like when we're doing preliminary stuff and whatever, so that people can see how you get started in this. And I'm not sure what's going to happen this season. I'm not sure what we're going to do on top of the hill. I do know somebody over here is not happy with the idea of me going underground at top of the hill. Okay. I don't know about the upper working there. I think we might be able to do that in a way that she's reasonably comfortable with. The bottom working, don't know. Okay. I really don't know.
No.
She's got the heebie-jeebies there.
Already said no.
So, I don't know. I've got a place where I want to dig down and see if I can't find the structure, but I wouldn't be going underground. What does what look like, Adam? Top of the hill? Go through the past videos. Okay? You don't have to go very far in the past there. So, I don't know. A black high vis vest. Montana Bee, I can see a couple weekends worth of work, some sampling, and some decision making. The mill, I see several weeks of work, doing some testing and this and that and the other. Top of the hill, I see a fair amount of exploration work this season. And we got Jeff Kablock's possibilities. We've got something else. We got Dave Vanderwall's mine. I mean, there's a lot of things to check out. And once we find something where it's like, yes, we can make money doing this, then we got to focus on that. Because that provides the money for the other stuff. So anyhow, that's our evil plan. Anyone else got any good questions? And thank you very much for coming up with that question. It worked really good. You know? Thanks for stopping by, Adam, if you're still here. Goodness, why is it being difficult? Well. Oh, you bet, Brian. Let's say these are the sort of things that are not necessarily obvious if you haven't done it before. But you know, let's see. Anyone else got anything right quick? Hold on, honey bunny. Yeah, check them out, Brian. You don't know until you test. Okay, Noble. I don't see anything else, honey bunny. Go ahead and hit it. But yeah, that's one of the things that you just gotta always double check everything whenever you possibly can. That'll save you a lot of grief in the long run. So happy prospecting and keep it safe out there. And there we go.